Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Novia Lestari. My NPM 19220259. I'm from class 2019 B3. So today I want to explain every single thing about interpreter and interpreting. There are the differences between interpreter and interpreting, requirements when interpreting, a historical background, and the type of interpreting. So for the first, the definition of interpreter. Interpreter is a profession that someone that to translate a language orally from source language to the target language, while interpreting is the oral transfer of message between speakers of different language. Interpreting is the facilitation of spoken or sign language communication between users of different language. There are requirements when interpreting. The interpreter seeks to compose the message as accurately as possible, convey the content and spirit of the original message, taking into account the cultural context. First, the interpreter compiles all message received accurately and completely without adding, subtracting, or replacing the original meaning of the message. Interpreters mimic the tones, style of speech, or intonation of the speaker. Next, interpreters regulate the flow of communication. For example, the interpreter may ask the speaker to pause while speaking or not speak too fast. Fourth, the interpreter immediately corrects the misinterpretation. And the last, interpreter must be able to maintain transparency when carrying out the interpretation process. For example, when I want to ask for confirmation of information received, the interpreter tells all parties, I who act as an interpreter do not understand the message delivered, so I want to ask for an explanation. Okay, next, historical background of interpreting. The first written proof of interpreting dates back to 3000 BC, at which time the ancient Egyptian had a hieroglyph signifying interpreter. The next widely known use of interpreting occurred in ancient Greece and Rome. For both the ancient Greeks and Romans, learning the language of the people that they conquered was considered undignified. Furthermore, during this era and up until the 17th century, Latin was the lingua franca, or the language of diplomacy, in Europe, and therefore all nations had to have some citizen who spoke Latin in order to carry on diplomatic relations. Throughout the centuries, interpreting became more and more widely spread due to a number of factors: religion, age of exploitation, and International Labour Conference in Geneva, Switzerland in 1927. However, multilingual situations do not always require interpreting for some reason. For some groups, individual and multilingualism is a common feature. Example, the notable multilingualism of Australian Aboriginal groups. 2. Communication problems may be overcome by use of recognized lingua franca, generally not the mother tongue. 3. Certain social groups gain multilingual skill because their particular roles. Example, traders. And the last, where geographical boundaries are sharp, there may have been a little understanding of the language of others who live even a little distance away. Okay, and the last type of interpreting. Here, there are two types of interpreting. For the first, conference interpreting, and the second one is liaison interpreting. Conference interpreting. Conference interpreting is done is in a conference setting. The interviewer sits in separate place or booth that can see the client or participant of the conference. Each booth usually consists of two speakers who only translate to one language. They can be divided into active speakers and passive speakers. Active speakers or interpreters are tasked with listening and translating the oral discourse they hear into the target language, while passive interpreters become assistants who must be ready at any time to provide information if there are parts that are left behind. While in other booths, different subtitles translate into different language. Conference participants can simply choose the available language channels. Based on the time of speech, the translation in conference setting is often done simultaneously. The interpreter directly translates the ideas conveyed by the speaker in the source language to the target language, assigned to him at the same time. But not infrequently, it is also carried out in a consecutive or alternative manner that the interpreter is given the time to interpret. This is if the event involves a lot of question and answer. And liaison interpreting. Liaison interpreting is the most informal form of interpreting, typically used during visits of delegation or at small business meetings. The interpreter accompanies the group or delegation on its visit and interprets whenever required. For business negotiation, the interpreter sits at the table with negotiating parties. Different techniques are used depending on the situation. With liaison interpreting, the interpreter doesn't need to do the same kind of preparation as with simultaneous or consecutive interpretation. It is still important that the client and the interpreter have planned a meeting beforehand. It is much better that the interpreter knows the subject, the company, and the general sector of the client to increase the probability of success in negotiation. Okay, I think that's all about interpreter and interpreting. Thank you for watching. Bye bye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.